Now this car, the VTEC kicks in at 5,400 RPM. You can hear it! You can hear it change! Oh my God! What an absolute beast of a machine. Hello and welcome to Road to the F1. I'm Paul Anderson. On this series, we're meeting people online, we're reviewing their cars, and we're connecting our social media dots with the goal of reaching the McLaren F1. Just like that classic 90s film, The 6 Degrees of Separation. Or if you really know your pop culture, The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yes, that was actually a thing. And just like that film, we've got another 90s classic today, the Acura Integra Type R. A big thanks to Avi who reached out and handed over the keys to his car today. He's got a small collection of some really cool cars that we're going to be featuring on the show soon. And if you've got an interesting car, we'd love to feature it on the show. You can send off a DM or send me an email at roadtothef1@gmail.com. So today we've got the Integra Type R, Honda/Acura's race car for the road. Now I know that might seem a little bit dramatic, but it's really actually not that far off from the truth. The Integra was homologated because Honda wanted to take it racing. So there's a lot of goodies on this car that you just don't see in an average road car. Starting with the chassis, if it was going to be a race car, it had to be made extra stiff. So they added some cross bracing to the front, right across the engine. They beefed up the B-pillars. They added in some extra metal to the rear fender wells and the rear subframe. And they also added a cross brace into the trunk. Conveniently, they put that cross brace at the very back of the trunk, so you're still left with a usable trunk without having a bar right in the way. That helped a lot, but to really drill the point home, they also partially seam welded the chassis. Now, most, if not all, road cars would have the chassis stitch welded, which is merely the process of welding a spot here, and then here, and then here, and so on, until that joint literally looks like it's been stitched together. Nothing wrong with it. It'll hold your car together just fine. What a seam weld is when they weld all the way across the length of that joint. As you can imagine, that makes that joint a lot stronger, but it also makes it much less prone to flex, which is exactly what you want in your race car for the road. You add in on top of that the double wishbone suspension, the limited slip differential, and the ride height that was lowered by 15 millimeters to give this car a lower center of gravity, and you're left with a car that handles like a dream and is an absolute joy to drive. Now, that stiff chassis can't take all the credit. If Honda wanted to make a race car for the road, the Integra also had to shed some pounds. It's got thinner glass, they ditched the sunroof, they got rid of the air conditioning and the cruise control, although you could add it in as an option later on if you wanted. They removed some sound deadening, which I'm sure you can hear. They fitted a lighter flywheel, they even removed the vanity mirrors. All in all, this car lost 140 pounds, bringing it to a total weight of 2,600 pounds. By comparison, the new crop of Camaros weigh 3,700 pounds, which is just absurdly bloated. Now, from a styling standpoint, personally, I'm always a big fan of things that are clean and simple, but just a little bit different to make it stand out from the crowd. And that's exactly why I like the styling on this car. It's not flashy by any means, but with those 4 beady little front headlights, that rear wing that's big but not too big, it's just enough to have people say, look at that cool car. From the interior, This car is 23, 24 years old at this point, so understandably it's going to look a little bit dated. But again, everything is relatively bare bones, which is, again, for a race car for the road, that's what you're going to get. I'm not entirely sold on the layout of the buttons and the sliders, but honestly, I will take buttons and sliders over a touchscreen any day of the week. The seats in here are fantastically snug. It's one of the very few cars that actually has the red interior. The clutch feels really nice with that lightweight flywheel. It's really easy to use. The gear shifter with the titanium knob, I love the look of it. It feels really nice. The car is 23 years old at this point, so it's a little bit clunky, but it feels pretty nice. You know what you're doing with the gear shifter. The gauge layout, again, very straightforward, gives you all the information you need. And looking at the tach, it revs to a red line of 8,400 RPM, which is absolutely mind-boggling. And that brings us to what is probably the most impressive part about this car, the engine. Now, with everything I've talked about so far, it is all very important, and it does play a role in the overall driving experience of the car, but without a really great engine, it doesn't mean all that much. Fortunately, this car has got an engine that is actually become an icon. The B18 C5, a 1.8 liter VTEC inline 4, putting out 195 horsepower, giving it 108 horsepower per liter, which is insane. This car has the most power per liter of any naturally aspirated engine out at that time. The McLaren F1 only had 101 horsepower per liter, only. And with a piston speed of 80 feet per second, this was also the fastest naturally aspirated engine out at that time. It was faster than the engines that Honda was building for Formula One and IndyCar, which is absolutely insane. Now, how did they do that? Well, they did a bunch of things. A single wide port intake manifold, higher lift camshafts, lighter thin-stemmed valves, deeper valve pockets. All the ports were hand polished to help the air flow a little bit smoother in and out of the engine. And the pistons are lined with molybdenum. I don't know what molybdenum is, but it's an awful lot of fun to say, and it sounds really badass. You combine that all together with Honda's VTEC technology, and you're left with an engine that is absolutely insane. Now this car, the VTEC kicks in at 5,400 RPM. And it really is noticeable how the character of the engine changes once you start really giving it. So right now, I'm in fourth gear, I'm going 80. The speeds, but let's do this. Oh my God. That is just, I don't even have the words. I need a thesaurus. What a blast. Oh. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. We'll downshift, fourth gear. We're going 90, 4,000. Third gear, 5,400. You can hear it. You can hear it change. Oh my God. What an absolute beast of a machine. So that's a good place to wrap up the show. The Acura Integra Type R. They only made 3,900 of these, and by all accounts, an awful lot of them got stolen. So if you're lucky enough to own one of these, you hold on to it like the grim hands of death, because this is a fun car. On the scale of 1 to F1, this car gets a 6. I might even have to give it a 6.5. It shares an awful lot of characteristics with the F1 itself, an emphasis on handling, an emphasis on lightweight, and with an engine that actually is more powerful per liter than the McLaren F1, you just can't ignore that. So I'm going to drive with the VTEC a little bit more, and we'll see you on the next show. This is insane. I absolutely love this.